how do you put love in your heart? So we're starting this year off exploring and creating newness. And we're doing that by going back to the basics. And last week we talked about this idea that we called God. What does it mean to be God? And we talked about it as we come to this idea that everything that we believe, everything that we talk about, everything that we come to understand starts with that one thing. And everything that who we are is based off an infinite power and presence. So we describe God as infinite. And being infinite, that means there's nothing other than God. Does that make sense? Because in the idea of infinite, that means there's one consciousness, one beingness, one effervescence presence that is constantly growing and becoming more, and there's no place that it's not. There cannot be, so there cannot be anything other than God. And we talked about last week in the Bible started off, in the beginning was God, in the beginning was the Word. So there was God, and then the Word was spoken, and God, through its Word, created through its own power, creating everything out of itself. And so then we put up the idea that this is what we believe about God. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. So we talk about it's almighty. There's nothing other than it. It's indestructible because there's nothing that can oppose it. It's absolute because it's the only thing that exists, and it's a self-existent cause, meaning it causes, it creates out of itself. We then said this one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. So everything that it creates, it's creating out of itself, meaning it is that which it creates. So that is the very first concept that we talk about in religious science. That concept is the concept of oneness. Everything in the world now is about let's become one. One world, one love, one peace, one perfect relationship. You see how everything is coming back to oneness, and we come back to that, there's a healing, but we have to understand it at a deeper level. Because you see, we've talked about what God is. That's wonderful. But what good does that do you and me until we understand what is our relationship with that? And so the idea is then, so we go and we say, okay, we've got this core concept of oneness, but wait a second, this is just half of it. Here's the other half. We believe in the incarnation of Spirit in all, and that we are all incarnations of that one Spirit. In other words, I am that experience, I am that creative intelligence expressing. Each of you is that creative intelligence expressing. That the mind of God that is infinite, that is all-knowing, that is everywhere present, is the same mind which you are thinking to the degree that you become aware of it. It is in the degree that you become aware of it that you realize that you have a power, and when you believe that you have a power, all fear disappears. Because when you understand that you are one with God and that you are all-powerful and that your word, which is the sum total of all of your beliefs, conscious and unconscious, as they express and experience, you realize that your life at this very moment, if you put your life on the screen, it's the sum total of all the thoughts that you've had consciously and unconsciously to this point. Because you are the slide and you are the person who creates the slide. And the God light shines through that slide, projecting it out, and it becomes the experience that we are. Here's the beauty of that. Because you are the infinite nature of the one, and you are constantly creating and recreating yourself, you can change the slide. That's the power of this teaching. No matter where you've been, no matter who you've been with, no matter what you might have done in your life that you are not proud of, that you are not happy with, that you are not satisfied with, in this moment, all that needs to happen is a shift and change one thought to a new direction, and then to build on that with the next thought, and build on that with the next thought. And in the building, we create a consciousness, a deeper awareness that starts to reflect in our overall nature, and the slide that we put in front of the projector begins to change, and our life changes. So, if we have a slide up on the screen, and we don't like that slide, does it do us any good to talk about what happened yesterday that really ticked us off? Does it really do any good to talk about 25 years ago for some of us young people, that when we were 4, that my parent did something that bothered us? Did you catch that? That means I'm 29. I just wanted to let you see that I do talk seriously, but you've got to listen for the humor. There's humor in this. And my wife would tell you, no, you're 25, because that's how I act. You see, that's the slide I projected up onto the screen. I treat every day for a physical existence that functions at the level of a 25-year-old, a healthy, virile 25. I treat every day for an abundant nature that I get to experience the freedom to be life, to experience life. I treat every day for loving and caring relationships. I treat every day for guidance in how I can be a better person, a better expression of God, so that I can help share this message so we can empower everyone and come together with that. Here's the thing. Let's go back to the Bible. When Jesus was in the Bible and they were talking about his power, he said, "It is not I, but the Father within." And immediately, religions will grasp that and say, "Oh, give all glory to the Father." But they forgot that Jesus said over here, "The Father and I are one." Do you see there's the infinite nature of God? And there's the individualized expression of God right over here that he claimed to be. And then he didn't just claim to be for himself. He then said, "And this I can do, and you can do, and even more." Because you are the same presence and power that Jesus was. So Jesus was just this example that came out to show us the truth. He didn't come into this world to start a religion called Christianity. Jesus was a Jewish mystic. He was a Jewish rabbi who was bringing truth to the Jewish people to see things at a different way. He wanted them to be empowered. He wanted them to be able to see how magnificent God was expressing as them. And that was the message. Jesus came so he could, his purpose statement was, "I come here so that you can have life more abundantly." That was his mission statement. He didn't come here and say, "Hey, Greg, if you don't do this, you're going to hell." Because here's the key thing. Hell doesn't exist. Because hell is a state of mind. It cannot be a place. It cannot be that you're destined to go there, because to do that, it would mean that God would sentence itself to a place outside of itself which can't exist. You see, because being the infinite nature of God, there can only be God. So God is going to automatically be what? We talk about love as the self-givingness of God to itself. So God, as Greg, is always giving more to Greg. So God is always giving Greg or Sue or Mary or Bill an infinite number of do-overs. You like that? Do-overs. So whatever you've been, whatever you've done, you got a do-over. And if you screw it up, you get another do-over. But here's the thing. You've got to be gentle on yourself. You've got to let go of the attachment to the past. You've got to not beat yourself up and chain yourself that I had this experience in the past, therefore I'm destined to have it in the future. That is not the truth about God, because in the Word was made flesh in the beginning. Every new thought is a beginning. Do you hear that? Every new thought is a beginning. And when we understand that the power is infinite and we're one with the power, we realize our Word creates, we can go back to the beginning in every moment. So if I screw up and do something bad and my wife doesn't like it, do you think I ask for forgiveness? I just forget it. And I simply go back and say, I create a new thought, and I have a new experience. Now, that may not work with a lot of ladies out here, but I've trained her well. So I'm just saying it up front. You see, we went through practitioner studies together. So we understand this from a spiritual nature. So the words we understand are meaningless, but the actions are what truly demonstrate love. And the action is always about unconditional love. Love not judging. Love caring for another's happiness or your own happiness and expecting nothing in return. That's the pure idea that is behind this movement that's called Christianity. If they know we are Christians by our love, they don't know we are Christians by our words. Are you hearing that? It's by who you are in the world. They don't know that you're an Agapean. They don't know that you're a practicer of religious science. All they know is, who are you being? And if you're being love, they won't label you. They will just want to be with you. Because how easy is it to be with someone who loves, who doesn't judge you, who makes you laugh, who makes you feel good. But here's the thing. Can you be that way with yourself? Because until you can be that way with yourself, you ain't got nothing to give to anybody. That's the key thing that I've learned. As I do spiritual counseling and relationships, I understand I can't fix a couple, but I can teach an individual how they can be empowered to love themselves. And when their love is overflowing for themselves, the overflow can be given to others. So in that way, the love is never drained from within, because all that's being given is the overflow. Isn't that a beautiful way of looking at it? So you're a fountain of love. Everyone say, I'm a fountain of love. And I am overflowing. And I am overflowing with chocolate. Chocolate love. And it is gooey. And I love it. Doesn't that feel good? God's about feeling good. So let's come to this idea. And I love this idea because when we get into this idea that God made man, and then man in its brilliance decided to make God in its image. Instead of saying, well, wait a second, I'm in God's image. Let's get this right, okay? So if I'm in God's image, let's look at it from this standpoint. Does God have a divine plan for you? The answer is no. There is no divine plan. If you're looking for one, well, I would invite you to give it up. Because the only plan that there is for you is the one that you create. Because you're the God expression. You see, God does have a plan, but the God plan that it has for you is the one that you decide to create for yourself. It's the way that you decide to come forth and be in the world. It's the way you come forth and be this presence, be this love, be this joy. See, that's the plan, so you never have to worry about, am I pleasing God's plan? No. Are you pleasing this inner calling within you that's desiring to express and experience itself? And when you're not living up to that calling, you're going to feel pretty darn bad because there's no one greater at being a self-critic than yourself. So when you're feeling angst in you, when you're feeling anger, when you're feeling depression, what that is telling you, that emotional response is telling you, you're not living up to the higher image, the higher expression that you've created in your mind about who you want to be. Does that make sense? So when you're getting that negative twinge in your belly or in your shoulders or wherever that twinge comes from, stop and breathe. Say, oh, I'm not being the best Lee I want to be. How can I shift that? And remember again, in the beginning was the Word. All you got to do is shift that thought right then. Gradually, you'll start to keep switching the thought, and what happens? Your perspective changes, your mind changes, and you have a new experience. Our image of God will demonstrate to us what is our image of ourselves. The greater the image of God that we have, the more infinite that we have of this idea, the belief we have about it, will determine how much we believe we can do. Because if you believe that God is infinite, all-powerful, with nothing that can stop it, then you have to believe it about yourself. Because the image you have of God in your life right now is the same as the image you have for yourself. So you cannot increase your image of God without increasing your image for yourself. It's fruitless to do that. You would be in a state of despair because you would say, oh my God, if you're thinking about how do I as Lee increase my image, how do I do that? You're going, where's my power? Who do I think I am? Who do I think I am? But if I go back to oneness, I go, oh, I'm the individualization of the one. I am God expressing itself. I am the perfection of love. That's my power. That's my source. And what happens is, as you do this more and more and more, there's a faith, there's a power that comes into you. And every day of every moment of every minute, that faith starts building and building and building and building. And you don't even worry about the how, because the how is coming to you as you go. The how is feeding you. It's feeding you, and you know it's right because you're feeling it inside. The emotions are good. They're powerful. They're always for more good. When you're being for more God, you're always about expansion, because God, being infinite, is always expanding itself. So as you're expanding and you're becoming more, you can't help but feel good. The other day I was watching TV. And I was lying on the couch and I was watching TV. And I says, how am I expanding right now? And I realized I wasn't. And that's why I wasn't in the place to watch TV. So I came out of that and I did something different that I felt was an expansion of something that was in my mind where I wanted to be. Does that make sense? So I stopped when I caught myself in a state where I didn't want to be, thought about where was it I wanted to be, and I took an action, or I put a thought in that direction. I did that because I know my mind creates. Here's the thing. We talk about this in religious science. We have a 4-line mantra. There's one God, there's one life, that life is God's life, that life is perfect, that life is my life now. But take it and put it this way. There's one mind, that mind is perfect, that mind is God's mind, that mind is my mind now. So if God's the infinite mind over here, and this mind can create the cosmos, it can create a baby. Think of the miraculousness of a baby. God takes 2 cells from a man and a woman. It brings itself together as those 2 cells. There's a consciousness around those cells. That consciousness knows about birth, and it generates and builds and builds and builds, and then a baby is born into physical form. And then the consciousness that that baby is constantly desiring to become more. You see, that's what spiritual DNA is. It's the very building block of life. And these bodies are spiritual DNA that we've taken through our consciousness, and we've framed and we've built and we've done whatever to it. Now, that spiritual DNA can be moved around. It can be pushed here, moved there. Did any of you see the thing that's gone viral on Facebook? They've got this photographic session, and it's of this model in a bikini. And there's a guy behind her, but you barely see him. And the photographer's there, and he's clicking, and this woman is absolutely, by society standards, a 10. And when it's done, the commercial's done, the guy behind her was holding a vacuum cleaner to her back, and he pulled it off, and all of her excess layers just came out, and she was no longer this woman in a bikini. Well, that's what spiritual DNA is. You can reframe it through your mind. You can reframe it through, you have to see it to appreciate it. Trust me, I didn't do it justice, but if you saw it, you would giggle. Spiritual DNA is movable. It's reframable all the time. It's our consciousness. But our consciousness will not create without the power of oneness. Are you hearing that? And so what we talk about at Agape all the time is, in religious science, we are known in religious science for what we call spiritual mind treatment. Spiritual mind treatment is a way of doing affirmative prayer. Affirmative prayer is not asking, it is not beseeching, it is declaring, I am a powerful individual. I am abundant. Money flows to me, through me, in me, as me. I am capable of doing all that I desire now. Are you hearing how I'm not making a request on the universe? I'm claiming it into the universe. Affirmative prayer is about that. But the power of affirmative prayer is not in that declaration. It's not in that affirmation. It comes from the first step when I declare that there's one God and it is infinite. And then I go to the second step, which is to unify into that one God presence so that God and I are one, and now the power is there. I am one with God, and when I'm in that power, I now declare into that power my word, and to the degree that I believe it, I begin to demonstrate it. Because remember, a belief is what? It's a habit of thinking. And can we change our habit of thinking like this? Well, maybe. But my experience is it takes time. So a lot of times when we're praying for health, we have a belief that's caused us to be off-center, and we may have that unhealthy experience. But as we start to build a framework of health, our body starts to shift and change, and we become healthy again. Everything in the physical universe is an outpicturing of consciousness. Your life is an outpicturing of your consciousness. That is magnificent, because in that means you are now powerful and you can change it. A lot of times people ask me, well, how do I find God? And they're talking about looking outside of themselves. Well, that would be as silly as God looking to find itself. So people say, how do I find God? How do I find this presence? Well, look into the eyes of another human. Look into the eyes of a baby. Look in the mirror and look into your own eyes. Feel the rhythm when we're playing the music of the drum and the bass and the guitar and the voice. Just feel that essence, that vibration. People, you hear the word vibration coming up more and more and more. Well, life is nothing but energy vibrating. And the more we become one, the more we really feel the vibration. We feel the oneness of life. And there is a vibration. Right now, the vibration of this room is at a certain frequency. It was at a different frequency when we came in. It'll be at a different frequency when we leave. All of it is good. The key thing, though, the key word that we talk about time in and time out at Agape is awareness. Because the vibration always exists. The power always exists. But the truth comes through our awareness of who and what God is, who and what we are, and how we bring the two together and use it. The oneness is all the power that we have. We talk about this idea, you hear this more and more out there, that in new thought, we're on the leading edge. What does it mean to be on the leading edge? To be on the leading edge is we've identified that there's not something out there that I'm a victim to. There's not something out there that's controlling it. There's something within me and within everyone that is creative. And being on the leading edge, know that you are on the leading edge. If you were not on the leading edge, and this was what the average were thinking, this hotel would be filled with people. But you're on the leading edge. You're deciding, I'm going to think differently. I'm going to create a life differently than what the average person, the average being is creating. Because if you're not thinking consciously, you will have an experience that I call is built by the law of averages. That law of average means you're a victim. And you're going to have the average experience. You're going to have the average amount of money. You're going to have the average type of relationship, which means if you have that, that means starting today, if you have an average intelligence, you have a 50% chance if you decide to be married to be divorced. If you are average in health, that means that 30% of you are going to have heart attacks, 20-some% are going to die of cancer, and then 28% are going to have diabetes because you are now at the will of averages. If you're if you're in the law of averages, you're going to live in this type of home or this type of apartment, drive this type of car. It's not determined by your conscious thought. But see, you can be living in the law of averages, but in one aspect of your life, you can be deliberate. And you probably are. Steve Curry, our lead guitarist, he's deliberate about being a great guitar player. He practices, he enhances his skill because he has set that intention. Susie has set the intention that she's going to have the best commercial cleaning business in Dallas-Fort Worth. And she puts her heart and soul into that. The question I ask is, okay, if you're the fullness of God, you deserve it in all areas of life. And that's where the key word of balance comes in. So what we're going to be doing over the next 7, 8, 9, 10, I haven't even decided how many weeks, is we're going to explore this power And we're going to take it step by step. And how do we use it? So we've come to the point where we've said God is all there is. It's infinite. That's our touchstone. So when people ask you, what is your faith based on? You say, my faith is based on that there is an infinite power and presence. That's not the Bible, but that's your touchstone. That's the basis from which everything comes from. I am and God is infinite. You first start off with God is infinite. If God is infinite, then I am one with it. Everything we do from that point comes forward. And so what we're going to be talking about every week is, okay, now that that's true, how do we logically, how do we with our heart, how do we with our mind go forth and change our lives one step at a time, recreating it, so that we have a life that is infinitely abundant, that's full of perfect health, loving relationships. Most importantly, that we have a life where we get to experience love at a level that's even higher than we've imagined, and from that experience, our lives become joy-filled. Because I believe that joy is the highest expression of God. I think it's the natural outpicturing of love.